and welcome to an edition of the Interstellar Modeler. This is part 4 of the Battlestar Galactica build. So let's go ahead and continue on as we complete this model. Okay, so I left off the last video with completing the landing bays here. So what I'm doing now is attaching the landing bays to the centerpiece. But of course we have to wire them through, so let me just show you what I'm doing. So again, the plan here is to run these wires from the landing bay through this centerpiece. So I had to drill a hole here and through here. And the wires are now easily being passed through here underneath this attachment point here and into this center hole here. We'll pass the wires through there and through this hole, which will then join up with the rest of these wires here. So I'm going to go ahead and get the other side done, and we'll proceed on from there. Okay, so the wires have been fed through this center hole now, and it's pretty helpful to have these tweezers. What's nice about these lights that I've gotten from Model Train software is that the wires they use are fairly thin, so they're very easy to maneuver through this piece here. So the next thing to do will be to put this cover now on here, and so I'll glue that and we'll be able to attach the landing bays to each side. So I got to give that some time to dry, and once that's done we will then work on connecting everything to all the wires that you see here. Some of this stuff's going to have to be trimmed down so it can fit into the space here, and once everything's connected, everything will then feed through this center hole here, which has been drilled through, and that's going to go through a hollow tube that will connect it then to a stand. Okay, so as you see here, we have everything wired up. I was able to trim back some wires from the rear and forward sections of the ship and group them together like you see here. Now, I don't solder a lot of things, but in this case I decided it was important to do that because there were too many wires here. You don't really have to solder these sorts of things. You can just twist them together and put some shrink tubing, but I decided to add a little security here and place some soldering material onto each of the connections. Now, if you're not experienced at lighting your models, soldering might be something that may intimidate you a little bit, especially if you've not really done anything with electronics. I can tell you right now, I am not an electronics expert, but I decided to purchase an inexpensive soldering iron so that at least I have it available for these types of situations. Okay, so the model is just about complete here. I'm going to now place this piece onto the center section here. I will glue the landing bays into position, and then most of the assembly will be completed. After that, it's a matter of addressing now the fiber optics, at least snipping those there, and I do want to touch up a few areas with some paint, so I'm going to do that as well, and then I will apply the decals. Okay, so before moving on to the decals, I do want to point out one other thing here. Prior to doing those decals, I decided to go ahead and start snipping off the fiber optics cables, and this is going to present a little bit of a challenge for you if you decide to go this route. So the side of the hull is no big deal because you can get nice and flush against there to get a nice clean cut. But as I spoke of earlier in another video, the trenches here are going to be a bit difficult to get into, and sure enough, that is the case. The cuticle cutters that I bought earlier are curved enough to do so, but they're not giving a clean cut. So I decided to purchase a different type of cutter, and that's by Exolite. This is a 4-inch cutter that I got at Fry's, and it has a diagonal head, so it does allow me to get fairly close to the hull, particularly in these sections here, but I'm not able to get completely flush against the hull in these areas, so there are going to be these tiny little nubs sticking out in some of these areas. So I kind of knew that was going to be the case. I was hoping to be able to get a bit closer, but unfortunately that's just going to be the best I can do. I think it'll look okay overall, but that is again one challenge that does face you if you decide to go with fiber optics. Alright, so I'm going to continue on here and finish off these, and then I will move on to the decals. I know I said I wouldn't devote much time to decals here, but I thought I would take a second just to show you how they're working out. Now, what you're supposed to do when you apply decals is you're supposed to coat the surface with a gloss coat, and that should make the decals settle better and make it easier to apply them. But I'm not doing that in this case. I'm just going to go ahead and apply the decals right onto the surface. After I'm done, I'm going to then coat it with a dull coat, and then we should be good to go. So the decals come in one sheet like this, and included are all these different names that you can name your Battlestar. And there's a lot of red striping that is going to go onto the model. And because a lot of the surfaces have textures, it's going to be important that you use a microset and microsol solution to soften up those decals and that way they will conform to the textured surfaces. Alright, so you can see I have one side done already here, and I think again you'll find these decals pretty easy to work with. Really within seconds you put them in the water and take them out and they are ready to go. So I give some compliments here to Moebius for giving us some good decals. They're easy to work with, not too thin, and very easy to maneuver around. Alright guys, so just to let you in on a little tradition of mine, the last decal I ever put on is the name of the vessel. So let's go ahead and put on the Galactica here. Let's slide it right into place. There we go. And let's go ahead and position this. If you look at the miniature, the Galactica name is positioned off towards the front edge of the landing bay here. So we'll put it into position just like that. Okay, so the model is now completed, and what I'm going to do now is wait for the decals to dry a bit further, and then I will apply a dull coat. Then the next step will be to put it on its stand, and I will get everything together to do the final review for you. Alright guys, how about that for a little fanfare? You know, I've always wanted to try that with a video camera to see if I can make this thing look like it's flying through space. So here we have the Moebius Models Galactica kit. This is obviously from the original series. This kit measures 18 inches in length and about 6.5 inches in width, very much like the old Monogram kit. And as I pointed out previously, this kit is more detailed and more accurate than the old Monogram kit used to be. There are a few inconsistencies that people have already pointed out, particularly with the bridge area, but I can tell you for the most part this is the model that many of us have been waiting for. Okay, so let me just take a few minutes to review some specifics again in summary. The model is painted with Tester's light gray. I like that color because it's more of a true gray color. It's kind of off-white, versus some of the other colors that tend to appear a bit more almond in color if you go with camouflage gray or gold gray or any of those. The lighting is provided by 4 LEDs. You have 2 LEDs here, and one in the middle section. And of course we have the fiber optics that are wired through, allowing the light to be fed through all these small little portholes. The landing bays have 3mm LEDs. There's one for each one. And for the engines, I use 1.8mm cool white flickering lights. Again, I obtained these from modeltrainsoftware.com. It's the same type of lights that I used on my Viper model. And I really do like the flickering effect. It seems to kind of give you the feel of pulsating power that's coming through these engines, and it's a little bit different effect than versus having static lights shining through. And of course the landing bays have the forced perspective matte picture. I'm going to show you a picture or a snapshot of here because the video camera will bleach it out. And overall I'm pretty happy with the effect, although one oversight on my part was that I was just not thinking when I ended up using the same matte painting for each side. So just be aware that the box does come with one for the port and one for starboard. Don't make the same mistake I made. It was just something I was just so into putting everything together, I just completely neglected to pay attention to that. So I thought I'd turn the model over just to show you the power source here and how everything is wired. This of course is a 9-volt battery connection here, so everything is run off a 9-volt battery. The switch and connector that you see here was all obtained from modeltrainsoftware.com, and the one thing about it is that the switch was placed so you had a certain length of wire from the connection here to the switch and then out to the wires that you can connect to your lights, and it was somewhat in the middle, and I needed the switch to be closer towards the power source, so I did have to reconfigure it a little bit. So I snapped it off and resoldered it to this area here, and it worked out pretty well. So this goes to show that you don't have to connect it to the wall. You can essentially power everything from just a small battery this way, and it also makes the model more portable, so you can move it around. The stand is the Polar Lights stand that's available at most hobby stores. So it also comes with a solid metal rod that you can mount your model to. I, of course, replaced that with a brass tube here that's hollow to allow the wiring to pass through. One other note about lighting is that you can add lights to this top section of the ship here. But I didn't do it for several reasons. One is there's not a lot of room to work with here because the structures aren't very high, and I know the lights need to really be drilled into the sides of these structures, so there's not a lot of room to work with to begin with. Secondly is I actually did start the process, but it was going to already be a challenge to group all these other fiber optics together, let alone trying to feed more from the top. And third, I just couldn't really find a lot of good reference photos to tell me where to place the lights to begin with. And then the other thing I wanted to point out as well is that I used warm LEDs for the lights along the hull, and I used the cool LEDs for the engines. And I did that because I wanted the engines to emit kind of a bluish hue, which they do here, and also with pictures of the original miniature, the lights along the hull looked warmer to me, so I decided to try to duplicate that look from some of the shots that I've seen of the original miniature. So thanks again for watching. I really do appreciate it, as always, and I'm not sure what my next project is going to be because I've pretty much built everything that's been on my list. The next thing I'm hoping to get is the Johnny Quest plane, which isn't out yet, but hopefully that'll be soon. Alright, so if you have any questions, feel free to contact me. Again, I really do appreciate you guys watching, and I will see you in the next one. Take care.